Can I go to the sleepover?
I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Awesome.
Let's take a tour.
We're staying back, so you may have to do two.
Oh, okay. So first off, when was the house built?
1786, it was started and completed in 1787, according to what I've been told. But Ann Bevins is a local historian who's written a lot about this property, and so she's certainly the expert on the history of it. I can speak to what we're doing here to coordinate with the owners to preserve the structure, because it really is a unique opportunity, and a lot of times historic buildings just get turned into rubble, packed into dumpsters, and sent to the landfill. And aside from the historical value, there's really a lot of practical value here with the lumber. So one of the things I specialize in, I'm a builder and remodeler by trade, but I also specialize in dismantling these historic structures, mostly in coordination with Old World Timber, and that's for the purpose of reclaiming the lumber to be reused, mostly for flooring and wallboard and furniture, different architectural pieces. But this is different because we're going to disassemble the whole structure carefully so that it can be reassembled somewhere else to preserve the unique history that's here, because not many structures like this have survived, and the ones that do are in really rough shape. This one has been well preserved with nice good upkeep. They've kept the roof and the siding in good shape, so it's kept these timbers dry and in great shape.
So it's not a demolition. I think when some people heard that this was being taken down.
Right. I mean, technically it's a demolition permit because they don't have another category.
Okay.
This is a dismantling, and with very specific intentions so that it can be reassembled.
Do you have any idea where it's going to be reassembled?
No, that's still to be determined. It's available for sale from the property owners, and hopefully it will find a home that will really appreciate the value, and it'd be great if it was available to the public. I mean, but who knows? We'll see how that goes. And these boards right here in particular, these are probably my favorite component of the whole structure. These are walnut boards, some of them over 20 inches in width, coming out of old growth forests that likely these trees were alive 400 years ago, before the country was established. And they're just incredibly rare, really. And these floors that we're standing on are the original ash floor planks. A lot of the structure is original. There were many layers of finishes that needed to be removed to get to this point, so we can really see the structure of it.
How recently was the home occupied?
I don't know. Phil Drake could speak to that. I think within a decade, but I'm not sure. And there are some changes that we can see to the structure once we've opened things up. Like the front door was not where it was in the center. It was just to the side where this other opening is. That was closed in at a later point. Most of the windows have been made larger, the window openings. Originally, the windows went down to here, and there's an original side frame that we can see. When they first built this, they had to peg the sides of these beams with the side frames to hold them up. They're held in the corner because they stack, but the window used to stop here, and they've cut it bigger in all directions. And there were windows in every direction on each floor, just so they could have the ability to see out, most likely for safety. And these were closed in, and this was actually widened at some point. And one interesting thing, most people won't find it interesting, is that this chimney was built after the walls were plastered, because there's plaster that runs up behind all that brickwork. So I'm not really sure if they were original. It seems reasonable that they were here originally, but there are still some mysteries.
I imagine this is a very arduous process, dismantling it as opposed to just...
Absolutely.
What are
yeah.
the distinct differences?
Yeah, it's definitely a more expensive and labor-intensive process to carefully dismantle the components without breaking them. Most demolitions are handled with large equipment, and they really just break it to rubble. And
so you want to keep things like the original floor?
Yeah, that is our intention. Anything that's original. Some of the doors that were in here were are original. Most of them were not, but we've tried to keep all the original moldings and doors. We're going to keep the floorboards and all the structure.
Are these floors later?
Yes.
Early 1900s?
Yes.
Heartwood pine?
Yes. They've been here a long time. They were here before they made the changes to this wall because they ran under that wall. But I don't know when they were put in. The floor above us has the original floor planks. They're ash as well.
And then when was the extension to the house put in?
That's another unknown. It was that predates the purchase by the current owner's family. My guess is early 1900s, maybe turn of the century, based on the way the boards have been milled. Well, you can see here, there's a little detail on the side of this board right here. You can see the saw marks are horizontal and perpendicular to the board, and that was done with a pit saw, where one man was down in a pit on one end of the saw, another person was up on top of the timber with the other end of the saw, and they would saw back and forth using that method. But then, this board over here is a good example of a later timber that was cut with a circular saw, because the saw marks on the side of that are on an angle, and they show the shape of the saw and the technique that was used.
Would the plaster have been original, or would that have been done later?
Yes, it is. I did not think it was original, but once we started peeling the layers off, we did realize that it was originally plastered. But not those walls. Those walnut walls were originally left exposed as a finished edge, and they put this beaded detail on the edge. This is something they would have done on site with a hand plane that would cut that little detail on there, and that was an exposed finished wall. It took a lot of work to build something like that.
Are there some things you're learning during this process that you were surprised to learn about the house, how it was?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on log cabin style structures. I've dealt with a number of old buildings, historic buildings, but nothing of this nature. So there's a lot for me to learn here as well. And as a builder, it is kind of exciting to let the walls tell their story, so to speak. They do tell a story in terms of the structural changes and some of the modifications that have taken place.
Have you found anything on the property that may have been here, like outside of the actual structure? I don't know if any coins or anything like that.
No, I did some digging in the basement once I cleared that space. Found some broken pottery and broken old bottles and little bits of old toys, like a rubber wheel off of a car, a toy car. Old newspaper clippings and things that fell behind the mantles, because where the mantles mounted to the chimneys,
yeah,
they would set things on that ledge, and a little crack behind would catch things often. So we, found old cards and actually a University of Kentucky basketball ticket from the 30s, I think.
Really?
Some cool things there, but there wasn't a whole lot that we discovered in terms of
Do you expect to find anything related?
No, I think at this point we've kind of peeled back a lot. There might be some things under the floorboards, kind of in between that space, that on this second or first floor we might find something else. We've also come across some rodent nests where they've pulled a bunch of things into the nest. Actually, here's one behind you. A whole bunch of old newspaper. Not enough to read anything, but they pull interesting things into their nest. Not always newspaper.
Where are you based out of?
I live in Maine.
So you're here in Kentucky just to work on this project?
Yes. Yeah, I used to live in Lexington, but I've been out of the area for about 10 years.
And how did the property owners reach out to you? How did you become aware of it?
They reached out to my good friend Nathan Brown, who's the owner of Old World Timber in Lexington. And he deals with these kind of properties on a regular basis, and I've been his demolition contractor on a number of those projects.
So will the house go to storage in its dismantled form somewhere?
Yes, in the short term it'll be stored locally on a property owned by the family until it can find its next home, next resting place. And the dismantling process, I think it's getting to the exciting part of the project for myself, the more challenging and technical side. Some of these logs, particularly like this one at the top that goes full length, I think it's 35 feet from one end to the other. This timber should weigh near 2,000 pounds. So I'm really curious how they get it up there in the first place. 235 years ago. It's really an incredible feat. And each one of them is very heavy, even the short ones.
How many acres are on this property?
I believe it's 34. And if we look out this back window right here, this old barn, the historian Ann Bevins, her research determined that was their original house that they lived in while they built this structure. So it likely predates this, which really surprised me. It's in pretty poor shape, but it's still standing.
Anything in there?
A bunch of old rusty farm equipment.
Yeah. You guys disassembling that too? Or?
I think we will here this summer, but not right now. Just so that it doesn't go to waste, because that's likely what will happen if we don't rescue it. And that it's in pretty rough shape. It's not a candidate for being rebuilt, but it does have some good value in the lumber. We can give it a second life.